Namaskar, students. Welcome to today's special explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a massively important event, the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, which is widely celebrated as India's first war of independence. We're going to break down everything you need to know about this, keeping it super clear, highly structured, and trust me, really easy to remember for your exams.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just imagine an entire subcontinent, right? It's been simmering with tension for decades, just waiting to boil over. And the match that finally lit the powder keg? A simple, everyday rumor about the grease used on a rifle cartridge. Literally, a rifle cartridge. So how could something so small ignite India's very first war of independence? Well, we're going to solve that historical mystery together right now.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the introduction and background, then look at the four main causes. After that, we'll cover the outbreak and spread, the key leaders, the reasons it ultimately failed, and finally, the long-term results and impact.
All right, let's move to part one and see how this all built. Introduction and background.
So, what exactly was the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857? Basically, it was India's very first major anti-British movement. It was kicked off by the Sepoys. These were the Indian soldiers who were actually serving in the army of the British East India Company. Now, because of its massive scale and its ultimate goal of throwing off British authority entirely, this uprising is proudly remembered as the First War of Independence. You have to understand, this wasn't just some minor local protest. No, this was a massive, unprecedented challenge to colonial rule.
Moving on to part two, the four main causes. Because, as you know, major historical events, they never just happen overnight. Let's look at how the tension built up across four key areas.
First up, the political and economic causes. The frustration here was deep, and it was everywhere. Politically, the British pushed this highly controversial policy called the Doctrine of Lapse. This basically let them just capture and annex a bunch of Indian kingdoms, aggressively stripping away the power of local kings and nawabs. And as you can imagine, they were absolutely furious. Then on the economic side, everyday people were suffering just as much. The British slapped these heavy, excessive taxes on farmers. At the same time, native local industries were actively destroyed to make way for British goods, which completely ruined Indian merchants. So, from the highest royalty down to the everyday farmer, there was just this massive anger brewing.
And that brings us to the social and military causes. See, the frustration wasn't just about money or land. It was deeply, deeply personal. People were genuinely terrified that the British were interfering with traditional Indian culture. Plus, there was this widespread fear driven by the aggressive spread of Christianity. And then, inside the military itself, the Indian soldiers, the sepoys, faced terrible discrimination. I mean, they were getting significantly lower pay compared to their British peers, and were basically treated as second-class citizens in the very army they were fighting for.
So, the crucial point is this right here, the spark. The British introduced these new Enfield rifles to the army. Now, to load these specific rifles, soldiers literally had to bite off the ends of the cartridges. Well, rumors rapidly spread like wildfire that these cartridges were greased with cow and pig fat. For Hindu soldiers, cows are completely sacred. For Muslim soldiers, pigs are strictly forbidden. So in one single move, the British managed to deeply offend the religious beliefs of almost their entire Indian fighting force. The sepoys flat out refused to use the cartridges, and boom, the rebellion was ignited.
Part 3. Outbreak and spread. Things are about to move really fast.
The sequence of events here is incredibly rapid. On May 10, 1857, the rebellion officially explodes in the town of Meerut. The sepoys broke rank, freed their imprisoned comrades, and immediately started marching. By mid-May, literally just days later, these mutinying sepoys had successfully captured the historic city of Delhi. And by late May, to really legitimize their uprising, they declared Bahadur Shah II as the Emperor of India. So, in less than 3 weeks, a localized mutiny escalated into a full-blown national uprising aimed at restoring native rule.
All right, part 4. Key leaders and struggle. Heroes started emerging from all different corners of the country to fight the British forces.
You are definitely going to want to remember these iconic names for your exams. Mangal Pandey is widely remembered as one of the very first catalysts of the mutiny. Then you have the legendary Rani Lakshmibai. There was Nana Sahab and his brilliant commander Tantia Tope, along with Begum Hazrat Mahal. Just think about those names. It shows this incredibly diverse leadership. We're talking men, women, royalty, and soldiers, all uniting in a shared struggle against British authority.
And the fire of this rebellion spread so quickly across northern and central India. Delhi was the symbolic heart, for sure, but there were fierce battles raging in Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi, and Gwalior. The map of India was quite literally on fire with resistance. Let's transition to Part 5, Reasons for Failure. Why did such a massive, passionate movement ultimately collapse?
Now, what's really interesting here is that the failure wasn't due to a lack of bravery. Not at all. It was really about a lack of coordination and resources. First off, the rebellion just wasn't simultaneous. It flared up in isolated pockets rather than being one unified, nationwide movement striking at the exact same time. Second, the rebels had a severe shortage of modern weapons compared to the heavy British military machine. Tragically, several Indian kings actually chose to actively assist the British instead of joining the fight. And finally, there was no overall central organization guiding the broader strategy. It was deeply passionate, yes, but it was also highly fragmented.
Finally, Part 6, Results in Independence. Even though it failed militarily, it completely transformed India forever.
And this brilliantly illustrates the most massive political shift caused by the rebellion. Think about the before and after. Before 1858, India was literally ruled by a corporation, the British East India Company. Crazy, right? But the mutiny proved to London that the company simply couldn't manage the subcontinent anymore. So after 1858, the British government stepped in directly. The British Crown took absolute control, putting a permanent end to the era of company rule.
Of course, the British reacted defensively, drastically reducing the number of Indian soldiers in their army to prevent any future uprisings. But the deeper impact? That was on the Indian people themselves. The 1857 mutiny caused a massive, undeniable rise in Indian nationalism. For the very first time, people from entirely different regions and backgrounds realized, hey, it actually is possible to stand up to the British Empire. It planted these inescapable seeds, a surging spirit and a unified desire for complete independence.
So, let's summarize our explainer today. The Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 definitely failed on the battlefield, but historically, it was a profound success. It awakened a deep, lasting sense of Indian patriotism. It brought the vital concept of unity right to the forefront, and it permanently laid the critical foundation for the modern independence movement. What the British dismissed as just a crushed mutiny was, in reality, the crucial first step on India's long march toward ultimate freedom.
I want to leave you with a thought to ponder, something to take beyond your textbooks. Consider all the factors we discussed today, the causes, the incredible leaders, the sheer scale of the uprising. Imagine for a second if they had actually overcome that lack of organization. If the sepoys, the kings, and the common people had been fully simultaneously united in 1857, armed with proper leadership and resources, would India's independence have come nearly a century earlier? Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today.